Hello there, you're watching All 24 News Wellness Program with me, Karim Fazakri, and up next are the headlines. Algeria steps up on the world stage defending key causes. At the Africa-Russia Forum, the Algiers Principles Against Terror Funding were adopted, while President of the Republic Abdelmajid Tebboune also held important talks with Jordan's King Abdullah II. Also in our news, as Gaza strikes continue, Hamas calls for mediators to push for the deal's next phase. Meanwhile, raids escalate in the West Bank. Next up in Sudan, RSF drone attacks in Darfur are displacing residents, and the army has responded with shelling, while pressure is mounting to label the RSF as a terrorist organization. And later on, tensions deepen over Ukraine. Russia blames Kiev's allies for the ongoing conflict, and Zelensky is planning talks with European partners, while there are new warnings about the use of frozen Russian assets. All this and more shortly. Welcome back and thanks for joining our program. First up in our news, during its UN Security Council term, Algeria cemented its role as an active and influential voice in global decision-making. Its approach, championing just causes, pursuing peaceful conflict resolution, and pushing for a more sustainable international peace, delivered concrete diplomatic results. Here's Islam Said with the details.
Algeria's term on the UN Security Council marked a clear turning point for its diplomacy, one defined by visibility, influence, and a strong defense of just causes on the global stage. Throughout its agenda, Algeria positioned itself as a vocal advocate for oppressed peoples and a steady presence in key international debates. That role stood out during Algeria's presidency of the Security Council in January 2025. In that single month, it led 16 meetings, including several emergency sessions on the aggression against Gaza. Algeria repeatedly called for an immediate ceasefire and firmly backed the Palestinian people, even as US vetoes blocked council action. Beyond Gaza, Algeria also pushed for international support for Lebanon, Syria, and Yemen, warning that continued attacks and regional instability were deepening humanitarian and security crises across the Middle East. At the continental level, Algeria worked to amplify Africa's voice in the Security Council, convening 9 meetings on the security and economic challenges facing African countries. One major focus was Sudan, where Algeria pushed for inclusive political dialogue and a peaceful transition without foreign interference. Libya was also high on the agenda. Algerian diplomacy helped secure a historic decision allowing frozen Libyan assets to be reinvested through international financial institutions, a move aimed at supporting stability and reconstruction. Algeria also stayed firm on Western Sahara, defending the issue through international law and UN resolutions. At its initiative, a high-level Security Council meeting on terrorism in Africa led to the adoption of the so-called Algerian guidelines for combating terrorism. Beyond Africa and the Middle East, Algeria worked to keep other long-running crises, like those in the DRC, Colombia, Haiti, and Myanmar, on the Council's agenda, calling for stronger international backing and political solutions. And despite deep divisions and repeated deadlock within the Security Council, Algeria stayed the course, refusing to compromise on its principles, especially on Palestine, and insisting the Council must not shy away from its responsibilities. Algeria made it clear it won't back away from supporting Palestine and will keep pushing for an independent Palestinian state with Al-Quds as its capital.
And on a related note, the Second Ministerial Conference of the Africa-Russia Partnership Forum praised the African Group of Three on the UN Security Council for its active role in advancing and defending African positions. In a joint statement issued at the closing of the Cairo meeting, the conference highlighted the A3's contribution to strengthening international and regional peace and security. In the same context, the Africa-Russia Partnership Forum welcomed the UN Security Council's support for the Algiers guidelines on stopping terrorists from using new financial technologies. In a joint statement, the forum also praised the African Union's work to fight terrorism and prevent violent extremism, highlighting key institutions in Algiers like the AU Counterterrorism Center and the AU Police Cooperation Mechanism. Within the same scope, the Africa-Russia Partnership Forum's Ministerial Conference called for an end to colonialism and neo-colonialism, the preservation of historical memory, and reparations for the past wrongs. The joint statement emphasized respecting state sovereignty, rejecting foreign interference, and promoting African-led solutions to the continent's challenges. It also pushed for reforms in the UN Security Council and international governance to create a fairer, more just global system based on multilateralism and international law. In a separate update, and as you followed in our headlines, Algerian President Abdelmadjid Tebboune spoke on the phone with Jordan's King Abdullah II on Sunday. The two leaders talked about current events in the Arab world and international issues and agreed to meet in the future to discuss shared interest in more details. They also exchanged New Year greetings, with King Abdullah wishing Algeria continued prosperity and President of the Republic Abdelmadjid Tebboune sending his best wishes to Jordan. Meanwhile, Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf joined a meeting with the foreign ministers of Libya's neighboring countries on the sidelines of the Africa-Russia Partnership Forum in Cairo. He met with his counterparts from Egypt and Tunisia to discuss the latest developments in Libya. The three ministers agreed to hold their next coordination meeting in Tunisia early next year, aiming to boost consultation and cooperation on the Libyan situation. On World Arabic Language Day, Algerian Secretary of State for the National Community Abroad, Sofiane Shaib, highlighted the government's commitment to promoting Arabic among Algerians living overseas. He said the Foreign Ministry has launched new programs to strengthen connections with the diaspora and their heritage. Mr. Shaib also announced plans to open Algerian cultural centers in several countries, stressing close coordination with the High Council for the Arabic language.
The Algerian state, under the guidance of the country's highest authority, gives special attention to addressing the various needs of our national community living abroad, particularly in the fields of education, language and culture. In this context, we have proposed and examined a number of initiatives related to this vital aspect, including, of course, the organization of a full month of linguistic and cultural activities for the benefit of our community. Across 50 Algerian embassies and consulates around the world, celebrations were held to mark Arabic Language Month, culminating in this special event for World Arabic Language Day, which saw a strong and widespread turnout. This enthusiastic participation clearly reflects a deep sense of belonging and connection to identity, reaffirming that the Arabic language unites us just as our homeland does.
On the same occasion, Mr. Sofiane Shaib said the Foreign Ministry, working with the Ministry of National Education, will launch new programs to promote the use of Arabic among Algerians living abroad.
In this context, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, in cooperation with the Ministry of National Education, is working to develop and launch new initiatives aimed at addressing the educational and cultural needs of our community abroad. These initiatives are making remarkable progress and will soon be renewed, further strengthening ongoing efforts and reinforcing the status of the Arabic language among our children living overseas.
Moving on to another story, Ireland has reaffirmed its support for a UN-led solution to the Western Sahara conflict, emphasizing the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination. Foreign Minister Helen McEntee said Ireland is committed to a political solution and raised concerns about the EU-Morocco trade agreement, saying it must respect Sahrawi consent and follow international law.
Ireland's position on Western Sahara has always been and continues to be guided by the objective of reaching a just and lasting political solution that guarantees the right of the people of Western Sahara to self-determination. Ireland's engagement on this issue will continue, taking into account the role of the UN Secretary-General's personal envoy for Western Sahara, Stéphane de Mistura, officials at the headquarters of the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, as well as the network of missions, remain in contact with both parties to the conflict in order to support efforts to find a solution to this long-standing dispute.
In another topical development in the Gaza file, 4 Palestinians were killed on Sunday morning in airstrikes on Gaza's Shujaia neighborhood. 1 civilian died in a drone strike and 2 others were killed near a local gas station. Separately, 5 Palestinians, including 2 children, died when a house sheltering displaced people collapsed in Gaza City's Sheikh Radwan neighborhood. Civil defense teams recovered 3 bodies, while 2 remain missing. The death toll from building collapses in Gaza has now reached 18 since early December amid the ongoing Zionist military campaign. And in the meantime, the Palestinian Ministry of Health reports that 200,000 patients in Gaza are now cut off from emergency services due to the ongoing blockade. In a statement on Sunday, the ministry detailed severe shortages, a 52% lack of essential medicines, and a 71% shortage of medical supplies. It also confirmed that testing materials are completely unavailable in Gaza's healthcare facilities. For its part, Hamas has called on mediators to act urgently to restrain the Zionist entity and push for real reconstruction in Gaza. Spokesperson Hazim Qasim said ongoing ceasefire violations are making the humanitarian crisis worse, with the siege blocking, rebuilding, and leaving people without proper shelter. He added that Palestinians are still dying from collapsed buildings, flooding, cold, and airstrikes, showing that attacks continue despite talks to uphold the ceasefire. Zionist forces have carried out new airstrikes across Gaza, leaving civilians trapped, homes destroyed, and families struggling to survive amid winter storms. Rescue efforts are being hampered by the ongoing attacks, and the humanitarian agencies warn that children face life-threatening conditions with nowhere safe to go. Yasin Rikti reports.
Zionist forces have launched new strikes across several areas of the Gaza Strip, with local sources reporting civilian casualties and mounting humanitarian suffering, just as winter conditions push already displaced families to the brink. According to the Gaza Civil Defense, a Zionist artillery strike late Friday hit the Tufah neighborhood east of Gaza City, killing 5 people, including children. The attack brought the number of Palestinians killed since the October ceasefire to around 400.
The place we were sheltering in was hit. The walls collapsed while we were inside. I was trapped with my grandson, who was injured. When I managed to get out, there were many casualties around us.
Meanwhile, emergency responders said rescue efforts were repeatedly delayed.
When our crews first tried to reach the site, the Israeli fire forced us to pull back. Later, we were able to enter and evacuate the wounded.
These attacks come as Gaza's displaced population faces freezing temperatures and powerful storms. In overcrowded camps, children still try to play in moody alleys, but for many, survival has become a daily fight.
We frequently receive children suffering from hypothermia, and sadly, some of them don't make it. Others arrive at the hospital already lifeless. This has become a heartbreaking and all too common reality for children in the Gaza Strip.
Nearly 2 years of bombardment and blockade have destroyed basic living conditions. Hunger and severe malnutrition have left children especially vulnerable to the cold. During a recent storm, at least 13 children died, including a newborn in Khan Yunis who succumbed to hypothermia.
I just wish we could at least get some blankets so the children could cope with the cold. Our clothes and blankets are still damp from the last rain. They haven't even had the chance to dry. When it rains, we risk drowning, and we have nothing to protect ourselves from the cold. In the camp, we were given only one blanket, even though we're a family of 5. How can one blanket be enough? My disabled child also suffers from kidney disease. It's unbearable.
The International Committee of the Red Cross is urging the Zionist authorities to allow immediate humanitarian access, including tents and temporary shelters, to protect displaced families from freezing nights. But with aid still restricted and shelters collapsing under wind and rain, Gaza's children remain exposed, caught in a crisis that continues to deepen.
Meanwhile, in the occupied West Bank, Zionist raids on Saturday evening killed 2 Palestinians, including a child, in Salat al-Harithiyya and Kabatia near Jenin. 6 others were wounded in Tulkarm and Al-Quds. On Sunday, raids and arrests continued, with occupation forces detaining 7 Palestinians in Al-Khalil and Ramallah, according to Palestinian news agency reports. Elsewhere in the Middle East, Lebanon's health ministry reported that 2 people were killed and 2 others wounded in separate Zionist drone strikes in southern Lebanon. The Emergency Health Center said one strike hit a vehicle in Yatter, while the second targeted a motorcycle in Bentaj Bale's El-Qassar neighborhood. Similarly, Zionist occupation forces continued their aggression in southern Syria, this time on Sunday, advancing into Quneitra countryside. Syrian media reported movements into the village of Saida al-Hanout and the town of Saida. And in another development in Africa, 10 people were killed in a drone strike on a busy market in North Darfur, Sudan. According to AFP, citing the North Darfur Emergency Chambers Council, the El Hara market in El Malha was hit on Saturday, sparking fires in shops and causing major material losses. The council did not say who carried out the attack. Meanwhile, a military source said the Sudanese army conducted airstrikes on rapid support forces positions in South Kordofan. The source told Ultra Sudan on Sunday that the strikes caused losses in Borno, northwest of Kadugli, 2 days after the RSF claimed control of the town. And in the meantime, Sudan's Minister of Cabinet Affairs, Lamia Abdel Ghaffar, called for the Rapid Support Forces to be labeled a terrorist group and held accountable for crimes against civilians. Speaking at the Africa-Russia Partnership Forum in Cairo on Saturday, she stressed Sudan's goal of peace that protects its sovereignty, unity, and independence without foreign interference. Moving on to another development in Asia, this time where tensions flared again along the Cambodia-Thailand border. The Cambodian Ministry of Defense reported fresh Thai shelling in Ocharal on Sunday. In response, Malaysia's Foreign Ministry called on emergency ASEAN meeting on Monday to find ways to calm things down, stressing that both countries need to stick to ASEAN's principles of peaceful coexistence and good neighborliness. Well, these long simmering tensions between Cambodia and Thailand have flared up again, displacing hundreds of thousands and disrupting lives on both sides of the border. Here's Selma Nasib with more.
Long-running border tensions between Cambodia and Thailand have flared again around the disputed Preah Vihear temple. Despite a court ruling in Cambodia's favor, disagreements over the area remain unresolved, and now they're taking a heavy toll on civilians. In Thailand's Sa Kaeo province, Amorn Silavia returned to her village to find her 63-year-old home reduced to rubble, smoke still hanging in the air. Like many others, her family is now displaced with little left to rebuild their lives. It's all gone. There is nothing left. The fridge, TV, fan, everything is gone. Across the border in Cambodia, the impact has been even more widespread. The Interior Ministry says more than 500,000 people have been displaced after 2 weeks of deadly clashes. Women and children are among the hardest hit, forced to flee homes and schools as artillery fire, rockets, and airstrikes rocked border areas. When they announced for Thais to evacuate, they all had shelters to go to, but Cambodians don't have anywhere to go. They will listen to the explosions every day and night, and they don't know what to do with their lives. They are in danger. Their lives are at risk. The fighting is also hurting Cambodia's economy, especially tourism. As violence spread closer to Siem Reap, visitor numbers dropped sharply. Once busy streets are quieter, and hotels and restaurants say cancellations are piling up.
Since the border clashes started, tourism in Siem Reap has been badly affected. Visitors from Europe and Asia have been continuously cancelling their bookings.
In short, it's very quiet. It is supposed to be the peak season for tourism, but tourist arrivals have decreased and many visitors have cancelled their bookings. It is much quieter than before. As clashes continue, the conflict is leaving deep human and economic scars, displacing hundreds of thousands and disrupting everyday life. Resolving the dispute peacefully remains crucial to restore stability and protect civilians.
Europe now. The Kremlin said recent amendments by Europe and Kiev to Trump's Ukraine settlement plan undermine prospects for peace. Interfax quoted a Russian presidential aide on Sunday, saying the changes do not bring an agreement closer and questioning the value of proposed trilateral meeting with Russia, the US, and Ukraine.
Regarding the potential trilateral meeting of the representatives of the United States, Russia and Ukraine, there are currently no preparations underway. Russia has also not yet reviewed the US documents related to peaceful settlement following discussions with Europe and Kyiv. However, based on what we have seen in the media, I'm completely confident that the provisions introduced by the Europeans, in cooperation with the Ukrainians, and which they are attempting to include, clearly violate the documents and undermine the possibility of achieving a long-term peace.
In the same context, Russian President Vladimir Putin's special envoy Kirill Dmitriev says the ongoing talks with the United States in Miami are constructive. Dmitriev stated Saturday that the discussions between the two nations are progressing positively and are set to continue on Sunday. For his part, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky called on Sunday for wider consultations with European partners after last week's talks in Florida. In a Telegram post, he said discussions with the U.S. in Miami are progressing steadily and noted he had also spoken by phone with Norway's Prime Minister. The head of Russia's central bank, Elvira Nabiullina, warned that seizing or using the bank's frozen assets could seriously threaten global financial stability. After a board meeting on interest rates, she said such moves could undermine the international financial system and added that legal steps would follow once any decisions are officially made.
Prices for Russia's main export commodities are below our forecast. This is due to both the deterioration of global commodity markets and the impact of sanctions. Despite the worsening external conditions, the ruble remains strong. The first factor is the effect of the fiscal rule. The second is the effect of tight monetary policy. This contributes to a restrained import trend, which reduces demand for foreign currency.
To the United States now, inflation has become a central issue. In Michigan, a key state for the presidential race, rise in economic pressures are hitting part of Donald Trump's voter base. Details with Karim Asfawi.
Here in Michigan, inflation is testing Trump's population on a snowy morning in a rural region in this key state, which flipped red in the 2024 U.S. presidential election. Around 30 cars were lined up outside a food bank. Inside, volunteers were packing the lettuce, apples, and other basic necessities whose prices have remained high this year.
Christmas time gets a little tight in budget. Got 3 kids, so things with the presents and everything and family to buy for, food kind of ends up down the list of it. So this is always really nice around Christmas time.
Certainly I'm a lot more cautious at the grocery store. I mean, we buy off-brands, we buy less of things. We're very conscious about food that we throw away, that we buy too much. And then to eat out, we try not to eat out at all because the cost to go out to dinner and those kind of things have become substantially more expensive.
Democrats say Republican leaders are out of touch with everyday Americans, while others our conditions are starting to improve.
I think inflation has gone significantly down. I think the last time I read, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was maybe 2%. The previous administration, it was 9%.
That is the opportunity in the general, is to frankly pair Mike Rogers with Donald Trump. Both wealthy guys who don't know what groceries are, who don't understand the real challenges that people face in cost of living.
Amid economic frustrations, political battles, and hopes among the population, Michigan appears more than ever as a social barometer for Trump's popularity.
And now it's time to catch up on more news stories and the news in brief with Safian Kenturi.
Two people were killed and others wounded in Russian strikes on eastern Ukraine. Ukrainian authorities said one person was killed, 2 injured in a drone attack in Donetsk, while heavy air strikes killed another person in Zaporizhia. South African police announced that 10 people were killed and another 10 injured in a shooting carried out by unknown assailants in the town of Bykert-Sal, southwest of Johannesburg. Police said on Sunday that an unknown gunman opened fire indiscriminately on victims in the streets of the town. No details are yet available about the attackers' identities, and the motive for the attack remains unknown. Farmers in southwest France continue drought blockades over government's handling of a livestock disease outbreak, despite calls for Christmas truce. On Sunday, unions closed several roads, including the A75 motorway, while the Interior Ministry reported about 50 protests involving over 1,600 people. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said the blockade on oil tankers and the sanctions traveling to and from Venezuela will remain fully in force. The Venezuelan government announced it rejected U.S. detention of a second oil tanker off of its coast, describing the move as a dangerous act of international piracy.
And that's a wrap on tonight's news. For any updates or to catch up on stories you might have missed, check out our social media pages. From all of us here at All 24 News, I'm Karim Zachary. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, do take care.